Hey everybody, I'm back for another video on walking technique, and in this one I'm going back to an old subject favorite of mine, duck foot walking or out toeing. The title of this video is How to Perfect Your Duck Foot Walking. Now, you might say, why on earth would somebody want to perfect their duck foot walking? Generally, we're trying to get rid of duck foot walking. But I don't think you can really get rid of duck foot walking effectively if you don't understand what's causing it. So I want to go through some of the issues causing the duck foot walk, and then that's going to help you to retrain how to move with your feet facing directly forward. Before I get started, if you're new to the channel, I am Dr. Todd Martin, creator of the Walking Code. In this channel, I focus on trying to help you move with more fluidity, move with more confidence, and move with lower impact on your joints. So duck foot walking or out toeing is when the feet are turned out anything more than about 10 degrees. This is a very common problem. And once you know what it is and start watching for it, you really can't unsee it. You'll notice that there are probably more people walking around with duck feet than people walking around with their feet facing straight forward. So I really think it is something that needs to be addressed because it is not necessarily a benign phenomenon. When your feet are turned out more than 10 degrees, you are increasing the stress on the inside of your midfoot and the inside of your forefoot when you walk. That is going to increase the risk of problems like plantar fasciitis, bunions and hammer toes, also stresses the inside of the knee and can lead to knee arthritis. And there's another common problem called posterior tibial tendon dysfunction, where this tendon that supports the inside of the foot collapses and basically your ankle starts to almost fall off the inside of your foot. A really terrible problem to get. And it can be very commonly associated with people who are walking around duck-footed because of the increase in stress on this area with every step that you take. Now let's talk about what's causing duck foot walking. And what I am going to talk to you about here is going to be a little bit different than what you're probably going to read if you look up common causes of duck foot walking. Because I believe most problems with walking are not caused by your feet and legs, they're caused by what you're doing up here in the core, and I'm going to explain why that is. If you look up commonly thought of causes of duck foot walking, you'll see that femoral retroversion is one, where the femur is turned out, that's the upper leg bone turned out, and that is going to cause the feet to turn out because the hips are turned out. Or you can have tibiofemoral retroversion, where the tibia and fibula, the leg bones down here, are turned out relative to the knee, and that can be a cause of duck foot walking. And these issues could be attributed to tight and weak muscles in the outside of the hips that cause the hips to be turned out, or tight and weak muscles here in the outside of the lower legs causing the feet to turn out. But I don't think those are primarily the problem. Number one, there are so many people out there with duck foot walking patterns, it's hard to believe all of them have tight muscles. You will also see a lot of very strong people, even well-known actors out there who are clearly fit, who have very prominent duck feet. So do they really have weak muscles in the hips or in the lower legs that are causing the duck feet? I don't think so. Also, and the reason I really believe that you can't attribute this strictly to what's going on in the legs is that duck foot walking almost always affects the entire body. If you are a duck foot walker yourself, try this out. Just do a little observation of yourself. Or if you're not duck foot walking and you just want to learn a little bit more about it, watch other people duck foot walk, and what you will see all of the time, not some of the time, but all of the time, when people are walking with their feet turned out, their palms are going to be turned back like this. That means that the problem is not simply in the legs or the hips. It's a whole body movement problem. Now, if I were to just turn my feet out like this artificially, as if I was doing it from the hips or from the tibia, my thumbs are still going to be facing straight forward because I have normal posture. And if I walk this way, my thumbs are going to swing forward in the normal fashion, left arm with the right leg, right arm with the left leg, thumbs moving in this direction because I'm moving properly from the core, even if I turn my feet out that way. I'm not actually changing the way I walk. But when people are walking with duck feet, you will always see that they're walking with their palms turned back because the problem is being generated in the core and it's reflecting down in the legs, not the other way around. So if you do believe you have tight muscles in your hips or your lower legs, by all means, stretch them, strengthen them, foam roll them, whatever you want to do. But if your palms are turned backwards, that means there's something going on up here that is beyond just a leg muscle issue, and you need to address the full problem. And that's what I'm going to help you with today. If you're concerned that you have an anatomical turnout in your hips or in your feet due to tight muscles or even a bony deformity there, what you can do is simply walk on your toes. And if you are walking on your toes and they can face straight forward, then the problem is not that your hips are turned out or your feet are turned out relative to the knees. The problem is a whole core issue. If it was coming from the legs, you wouldn't be able to walk on your toes with your feet facing straight forward. When I examine patients in the office who are duck-footed, they are almost always perfectly capable of walking on their toes with their feet facing straight forward. And that's because the problem of duck-foot walking, the pattern of movement that's triggering it, is not relevant to walking on the toes, but it is relevant to when we walk heel first. Here's where the problem or the pattern of movement is being done incorrectly. Okay, so now let's look at what I believe is the core problem with duck foot walking, and that is namely the core. We're going to do a little bit of an exercise so we can figure out exactly what's happening. So first I want you to stand with one leg forward and it's going to face in the direction you want to travel. So my left foot is forward, facing directly in the direction of the camera where I want to travel. And I'm going to shift my weight onto my left foot. Make sure to stand with vertical posture, with your eyes gazing forward. Tuck your pelvis under using your lower abs. So your lower abs are activated on the left, keeping your pelvis in a neutral position. So from the side view, my foot's facing this way. My lower abs on the left are tucking the pelvis so it's straight up and down in a neutral position, and my spinal posture is in a neutral or vertical position here. My rear leg toes are on the ground, and I want you to take your left arm, if your left foot is forward, and reach it forward because that's going to reflect the motion of the upper waist core muscles on the left. So I have upper waist core muscles active on the left, lower abs active on the left, and in this position we have powered the shift of weight with flexion of my right hip. So I'm pulling forward with the right hip, flexing it as I use the core muscles in the waist on the left. That is this position here. This is where you're going to be at the end of the loading response phase of gait. That's after the heel hits the ground, right until the forefoot hits the ground. That is the end of the loading response phase. Core action going on here on the left, hip flexion on the right. So from this position, I want you to experiment a little bit so you can feel what's going on with your hip power. So from this position, Your right hip should be actively flexing, even though your leg is pulled behind your body. So it might appear that the leg is an extension, but really the hip is actively flexing. What you can do to know that is true is try to flex it more. Pull up on the hip without changing what's going on in the core. Flex the hip, and you'll notice that the body doesn't go anywhere because it's already in a stable position. If I wasn't already flexing the hip and then I changed my motion to hip flexion, something else would happen with the body, moving it away from this position. The fact that the body doesn't move means that the hip is already in active flexion. So we can't step forward when we are walking by flexing the hip, because that hip flexion brings us to here, and then we have to do something different. When we walk normally, that something different is going to be activating the hip muscles on the side of the standing leg to create the swing through. If you've seen my other videos, you should be familiar with this already, but from this position, waist active on the left, we have to activate the hip on the left to pull forward, and that is what causes us to walk into the swing through phase of gait. We cannot power with the swing leg hip. The swing leg hip has already done its action here. Now is the time for the standing leg hip to take charge and create the swing through. So that's the first exercise I want you to feel. And if you are walking with duck feet, that might seem a little awkward because it's not the way you are walking. If you walk normally, then that should just feel like a normal step. Now we're going to do exercise number 2, and we're going to do a forward step like we would if we were practicing Tai Chi, which is a great exercise, but it uses different patterns of movement than we are going to use with a normal walk, because when we step forward in Tai Chi, we leave all of our weight on the rear leg as we step out onto the heel. So this is what's called an advancing step in Tai Chi. This is some of the first steps that you'll learn if you take a Tai Chi class. I highly encourage you to look at some of my Tai Chi videos on the channel, because it is a great form of exercise to help with movement and balance. But take your arms and place them in this, what we call a ball carrying position. Your knee should be facing straight forward with your toes touching the ground with no weight on them. And then your standing leg foot is going to be turned out at an angle at about 30 to 45 degrees here. And we're going to stand in this balanced position. And then we're going to step out using the core on the right to place the heel out in front of the body. So this is a typical basic Tai Chi step. You notice as I do that, the body should lower a little bit. I should keep my vertical posture as that happens. This is an action of the core causing the leg to swing out. You might think it is my hip that's making the leg swing out, but when we're in this position, I already have flexion of the hip. It's already been done. If I flex it more, it's just going to do that, but the body's not going to go anywhere. So to step out, what I'm doing is changing the core muscles from the left side. That's the same side when I did this exercise where we're walking. That's the core muscle action. Then I lifted up by a little change in the core muscles here. So now I'm standing with my leg rooted on the left, but I'm in this position, and I'm going to use the lower abs on the right to cause the leg to swing out onto the heel. So now I have my heel placement. My right leg is facing towards the camera. My left leg is facing out. The foot is out at about 30 to 45 degrees relative to my right leg. This is the sort of angle that most people are walking with when they are duck foot walking, because they are using this stepping pattern to create the swing through. And then what's happening is they're using the power from the left hip to shift forward. And then they're going to use the core on the left to swing forward just like they did before, but we're not going to pass through that little balanced position. So I shifted forward and then used the core to basically throw the leg forward. And again, it's going to come forward with this 30 to 45 degree turnout. And then I'm going to shift forward again by flexing the right hip. And now I'm going to use the core to throw the leg out again. What ultimately happens as we repeat that cycle over and over is we shift weight, then use the rear leg side of the core to power the swing through. Shift weight and then use the rear leg side of the core to power the swing through. And we keep doing that successively over and over. So that is what duck foot walking is. We are powering the swing through with the core on the wrong side. So the swing leg side of the core, upper waist, lower waist, and hip power the swing through. Then we shift weight, and then we use the core on the opposite side to power the swing through. And each time we do it, the feet are going to turn out approximately at that angle. And that's what's happening with duck foot walking. So it doesn't have really anything to do with tightness in the muscles in the hips or in the lower legs. It is simply the pattern of movement, and it's just the wrong pattern at the wrong time. So if we want to fix that, what we need to fix is the pattern of movement coming from the core. So let's go back to the original exercise where we've shifted the weight over the left leg. Lower abs active on the left, upper abs active on the left. Now you have two choices. You can either throw your rear leg forward using the core on the right, and notice how when I do that, the palm turns in because that is part of that core motion, and that's why when people duck foot walk, the palm is going to turn backwards like this. So that's one option, and that's the option that we want to avoid. Now what we're going to do, instead of throwing the swing leg forward with this side of the core, we're going to keep this side of the core engaged, upper and lower waist, and use your hips on this side to pull the body into the swing through. See if you can pause in this position, almost like you're slow motion running, or we'll do slow motion walking here. From this position, pull from the standing leg hip, really stretch that core motion out so you can feel it happening, and then place your foot and change weight and start over again. So feel the core action all on the side of the standing leg, not the side of the swing leg. That is the fundamental difference between regular walking with the feet forward and duck foot walking with the feet turned out at an angle. If you can understand that and practice that, I think you'll be able to do a much better job of fixing your duck foot walking than simply focusing on trying to stretch or strengthen tight or weak muscles in the hips or in the lower legs, because I don't think that is where the problem originates. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you've clicked the like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you can get notified when my next videos are coming out. It's 2024, and I plan to try and publish a little bit more regularly this year. So I hope you find that helpful. Also, there is a new Walking Code members group on my website at toddmartinmd.com. You can find the link above or in the description section. If you sign up for the members group, you'll have access to the full original Walking Code course, as well as a members forum where you can interact with both me and other members, sharing information, questions, things that have worked out for you, things that have not worked out for you. So we can go through life with more confidence with our movement, more fluidity with our movement, and hopefully lower impact on the joints with our movement, so our joints will age gracefully and pain-free. I'll see you in the next one.